Welcome everyone to our seminar on student experience in a world transformed. As we stand in the year 2034, we find ourselves in an era where our planet has faced significant climatic challenges, with global temperatures edging towards a 2.5-degree increase. In this world, education has undergone a digital revolution marked by the emergence of artificial general intelligence, or AGI. AGI, an advanced form of AI that mimics human cognition, has reshaped how we approach learning and problem solving. However, amidst this technological surge, the human element remains central. Our seminar today reaffirms that despite our digital advancements, the human touch is irreplaceable. Particularly in regional New South Wales, universities have transformed into digital hubs, embracing AGI and the Metaverse, a collective virtual shared space. Here, immersive and interactive learning is the norm. Yet, these institutions stand as a testament to the power of human connection. They bridge the gap between digital innovation and human-centric education, offering students not just technological prowess, but also emotional and ethical guidance. Generation Alpha, the students of today, are digital natives. They were born into a world of rapid tech evolution and environmental awareness. Their educational journey is more than just acquiring knowledge. It's about understanding the interplay of technology and humanity. They seek education that is responsive, adaptive, and empathetic, one that prepares them for a future where technology and human values coexist. As we delve into our seminar, we focus on how technology and humanity intertwine to shape student well-being. We explore the role of regional universities as anchors of this human-digital nexus, providing expertise, support, and a human touch amidst a digital world. These institutions are not just centers of learning. They are the custodians of human connection, helping students navigate and creatively harness the power of AGI for their personal and professional growth. Join us on this insightful journey as we explore the future of education. A future where technology empowers, but human connection guides and enriches the student experience.
I'm not sure if anyone else noticed it, but there are a few kind of technical hiccups. The computer, the internet connection maybe felt a little bit off, or maybe it was just Mark having a bad day. But really what we were seeing was a deep fake of Mark. Actually, Mark is on his way to the seminar, but is stuck in traffic. So we're able to, oh, maybe he's joining now. We're able to, can you hear us, Mark, if you're joining?
Yes, yeah, I can. Yeah, sorry,
No problem.
yeah, thanks.
The only thing I would say is I had this joke about, I never thought I'd be able to say at an event that the quote, "Would the real Slim Shady, aka Mark Evans, please pop up?" And so now I've told it in a really terrible way, but welcome and
Welcome.
joining us.
Thank you.
Look,
Yeah, he was a lot better looking, wasn't he? And less waffly, but I think maybe a little bit less passionate
that's it.
than I would be.
That's it. Less passionate in all different ways. So were you able to see that while you're in the car, the deep fake itself?
Yeah, I was. Yeah, I managed to park. And yeah, look, I think it was pretty compelling, and it was a very good fake. Um, and obviously, it was a more studied performance than you would probably normally get from me. But maybe, yeah, as I said, less passionate around the subject.
Yeah, so just for context, so the audience knows as well. So that was a deep fake of Mark, and actually Mark has not seen that before. So we purposefully asked Mark to do a little sort of a video, just saying a few things at the screen, and then we developed a script. So he never said those words either, although I approved it. But let's just put that out there. And so we've kind of hid it from him today. So I guess, Mark, like, how did the video make you feel seeing that, and kind of what went through your mind, seeing yourself saying things that you never really said before?
Well, I guess I felt that, if you have the technical capability, you can develop very convincing fakes. Obviously, as part of this process, um, obviously, there was a video taken of me, um, and that included me talking for, I think, about 5 minutes. Um, and then the fake was developed from that. And I think, in general, you can imagine a lot of people being very, very convinced by the fake. So obviously there are perils, but possible opportunities there, aren't they? And I guess that will be the focus in the discussion today, because there's clearly opportunities from that type of technology, but there's ethical perils as well at the same time.
Yeah, so that's quite interesting. So if we think about the practicals there, what do you think the opportunities of deep fake technology are? Anything that comes to mind for you?
Well, as you said, you said that there were some technical difficulties, and I was probably maybe having an off day. But actually, I guess if you could use this technology to ensure that actually you don't have an off day, that there's an upbeat, engaging Mark on an ongoing basis. If you got the right performance.
Yes.
So in terms of teaching, I think in terms of teaching online, which I think can be very, very tiring, actually. Um, that's the big issue for me, is that the difference between the kind of face-to-face experience and the online experience is that often you don't have the same breaks um, that you have in the face-to-face format. So I guess so the strength there would be that you could deliver a high quality lecture to time using your avatar. Um, uh, but would you have the same connection and passion with your audience? Well, yeah. I mean, the technology, obviously you could edit and do a whole range of different things. But then there's the broader issue, basically around the ethics of using this type
Well,
of
if we go
technology.
back to the opportunities, I love the idea of also, even if people have a fear of public speaking, now you could kind of put your pre-prepared speech
Yes.
and then pop back up in some ways. And that's quite interesting because I wasn't even thinking about as you said, not having an off day. So some of the things that I was considering were things like, you could use digital art, or you can use like editing tools, or there could be some research opportunities here. But really, it's also that piece around changing and shifting
Performance.
performance. Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, we're not, that's the interesting thing about academics, is that unlike actors, we're not trained to perform. We learn through doing. I've actually thought we should actually be trained much more in terms of performance. But you can see the way in which you can use this technology to develop a really high quality performance for your students. And as you said, those people who find that more challenging, this provides them with the opportunity to do something of real quality. So there's definitely an opportunity there in terms of the performance nature of teaching. And we all know how important that is in terms of connecting with our students.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm loving the idea too of like the opportunity to be in multiple places at once then, right? So similar to what
Mm.
happened, we can play the video, it looks like you're in the session and maybe not in some ways. Okay, let's go then to the risks, as you were saying. So there are some ethical risks, but what else do you see? What risks do you think universities, particularly kind of from a student perspective, could face with deep fake technology?
Well, obviously, there's the authenticity piece. Um, and if they start to question the authenticity of what they're seeing, then they may start to question the authenticity of the knowledge that you're presenting. So obviously, in an era um, where truth decay is becoming a real problem, and we're seeing the polarization of ideas, deep fakes can add to that polarization and that questioning of the authenticity of knowledge. And I think, for universities, if you're asking me, what's one of the fundamental role of universities in the contemporary world, um, it is to debunk myths. It is to to challenge fake news. It is to make sure that our knowledge is as credible and as valid and as evidence-based as possible. And a lot of that is driven by trust and perceptions of universities being the guardians of trusted knowledge. Yeah, so there's peril there, definitely.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think the assumed trust, as you said, the guardians of knowledge, the differences of thinking. Again, I was thinking really narrow and considering things like academic integrity or some of the ethical concerns. But you're right. I was reading an article actually the other day that talked from the World Economic Forum, that looked at global risks, and they say that one of the most severe short-term risks in the world is this type of digital deception or deep fakes, so to speak, because they're becoming so realistic.
Yeah, yeah. And once that creates um, kind of a culture of deception, or the perception that everything and everybody could be out deceiving you, that creates kind of a sense of paranoia and fear, doesn't it, potentially?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I actually wanted to do a poll with the audience because when we in our team in the AI and Cyber Futures Institute had a pre-review of the deepfake video, we had different perceptions. So I thought it was really, really realistic, whereas Ghana, our executive director, thought it was not very realistic at all. And Matt had some pessimism there too, knowing you and seeing you present more than I had. But I was really shocked at how realistic it was. So can we do a poll, Matt? Is that okay to just ask people in the audience, how convinced were you by the deepfake? What 10 being, I definitely thought it was Mark and didn't think anything other than that. 0 being, I wasn't convinced at all. Could you tell me and rate, where did you think, and 5 being, I wasn't too sure? Okay, the poll's up, so people are starting to answer. I must say, just quickly while the poll's going, I really enjoyed Mark halfway through too, where you kind of even put your hand on your heart, and you know the body language that was there as well. So if you can vote, still some responses are coming through. I'll let you know when we've got the results in. If you're struggling, okay, sorry, here we go. The polls are up. So most people have said 6. 35% have said 8. So we've got about, I believed it. I mean, that's, if we're saying most are saying 6, I'm going to say like over 50% plus the 35% saying 8. I'm going to say that's more than half of us, if not significant proportion of us that are actually believed the deepfake, right? We watched it. We maybe had some level of uncertainty there, but it looked quite good. And I think because we've been on places like Zoom over the last few years, the digital disruption that we can sometimes get leads us to believe something that's a little bit more blurred. Only 12% of people were less than 5. So most of us, again, so there you go, 98% of people were, I semi-believed it or above, which is pretty crazy actually to think about. So Mark, maybe I'll just quickly throw it back to you and say, how does that make you feel knowing most people believed it or accepted it to some level?
Well, it just shows you, and you obviously you don't need to convince everybody either, do you? To create, if you were using this in, to mobilize bias against a particular set of ideas, you don't need to convince everybody. So it just shows you how easy it is to mobilize bias, actually.
Yes.
So you can see absolutely the way in which, certain countries using bots to interfere in elections is achieved very easily, actually. So suddenly you can see a huge wave of opinion moving against a particular political party or a particular politician, and you can see why.
Yes.
in this example. And
Yeah.
then you've got snowballing effects as well, because you've got the snowballing effects of the mobilization of bias. So yeah, so look, concerns there, but also at the same time, huge huge opportunities if we're able to manage these processes in an ethical way.
Yeah, I see this as like kind of the whispers game where you can set up something, and as long as a few people believe it, then the rumors spread so much. And as you said, I know in the US with the election coming up, there's already been deep fake phone calls of convincing people or saying not to go to the vote. So in terms of a university setting, you can have these pieces where there might be some mean at the leadership level, but also at the student level, and how that might kind of catalyze change. Okay, this is
Yeah. And if you use that Trump observation, so Trump made the observation that if you say something um, with sufficient frequency, people will start to believe it, even if it's not true.
yes, yeah, and we can. I mean, we can kind of see that now. We've experienced it in some way, shape, or form in the last kind of video. Okay, look, that's all we have time for today for the deepfake section. But if anyone is interested, we can send the platform across to you as well. But please feel free to ask any questions that you have as we go through. What we're going to move into now is, for the next 40 minutes, we're actually going to start to hear from two experts in the field about how the student experience will or may change, and the evolving landscape of how this relates to things like student curriculums. Are we actually building curriculums that are future fit? And also assessments. How do we actually harness technology in a way to fit into our assessment process, or adapt the assessment process to technology? Or do we just kind of push away? And they're the things that we're going to explore. We have two presenters today. Each presenter will take 5 minutes to share their insights. And then there will be a fireside chat where we really encourage you as the audience to ask the questions that you have. Let me just first of all start with introducing the two panelists or guests. So first of all, we have our first guest, so Professor Simeon Simoff, who is a professor of information technology at Western Sydney University. He's known for his research and educational leadership across artificial intelligence, data science, and intelligent virtual reality. He has co-authored hundreds of research works, right, 300 or more, edited multiple collections in data science and intelligent technologies, and has been awarded over $1.2 million, or is it $11 million in competitive research funding? Did I make a mistake at 11, or it's 11? Oh, 11. Okay, I didn't make a mistake. I'm sorry. That's amazing. Anyway, so as a Pro-Vice Chancellor, and he's held numerous roles as deans. As Dean, he's actually been at the forefront of shaping and enhancing quality innovation across data science and computational thinking. I want to also add, he's also on long service leave. And so that in itself is impressive. It's actually giving his time on long service leave to us today. So thank you so much, Simeon. We'll go to you in a moment. I'll just introduce Mike as well. So Dr. Mike Perkins is the head of the Centre of Research and Innovation and a senior lecturer at the School of Business at the British University of Vietnam. He holds a PhD in management from University of York, where he explored performance management in local policing services. His current research focuses on performance management, academic integrity, and the impact of generative AI technologies in academia, particularly concerning higher education policies and responses to these advancements. Mike is also calling in from Vietnam. So it is now 6:24 a.m. there. So if you were like me and wondering if he is also a deep fake, he assumes he is real and actually showing up for the event at this time. So we can't thank you enough as well. Let's start, Simeon, with yourself, if we can. Would you like to sort of share 5 minutes about some insights about where you feel the student experience will lead us with technologies?
Yeah, thanks, Juliet. Thanks, and thanks for the invitation to share that experience. And I actually will continue. First of all, I'm starting to get very much worried about this deep fake expertise on the other side of Blue Mountains, so that we may have much more work to do in order to detect such things. But it was a great synthesis from Mark Evans. And I would say that one thing that was, from AI perspective, that was possible, easier to detect for as that maybe some fake or little incompetency, was the reference to to artificial general intelligence, which I think was made on purpose. And I would say that this is extremely important to be able actually to filter and create curriculum that has embedded mechanisms for guaranteeing what is in that curriculum, and what the AI-assisted pedagogy is using is very valid. In this sense, we had years ago, we had ARC funded earlier work on believability, which now emerges as a key issue, an important issue in any technology mediated curriculum. For the 5 minutes, I would like probably to focus on three specific aspects for related to curriculum. And first of all, is the enormous ability for a personalized learning. We had another ARC application at the time, which was called the Cambridge Tutor. And that application was looking at analyzing student learning styles, trends, sort of looking for gaps in existing knowledge through developing a personalized AI assistant. This was about roughly 10 years ago, and it was far away from today's sort of capabilities. But the whole idea nowadays is pretty much implementable. And I would like to put two specific features of generative AI that makes it implementable. It is first that it interacts now in natural language. So that was some sort of much bigger difficulty at the time. So this step now opens a completely new world for curriculum innovation. And the other is that actually it can extract knowledge and extract things directly from text, images, diagrams, and sort of variety of media in digitized form. That opens both opportunities, but also opens some sort of raises some red flags on that stand. But nevertheless, first is, and I would think to this that's worth discussion, is this personalized curriculum. That personalized curriculum may require some sort of much smaller granularity in the terms of how we constitute the structure of the curriculum. At Western Sydney, we did an interesting work on relating curriculum via a few AI technologies with descriptions of professional requirements, job descriptions, professional requirements, using Sphere framework, the skills framework for information age, which is focused on ICT and on computing area, but it also is applicable in several other areas, including business. That made a system that interacts with the student in terms of career aspirations. So I want to be a software engineer, and then it composes a personalized program where there are some complete subjects, but there are some subjects that are composed from a smaller modules that is guided by Sphere. This is still in experimental sort of stage, but it just demonstrates, and this can be changed during the education itself, during the study itself. Well, I paid too much attention on the centralized, and I see that my time on the personalized learning, and I see my time is sort of coming to a rapid end. Don't want to eat from Mike's time, so I would also mention just another thing: immersive learning. I noticed that today in the program there is a visit to a learning space in Metaverse, and in immersive learning, I mean, the capabilities there are probably, I wouldn't say infinite, but they are too many, because there are too many ways to interact with an immersive spaces. They can be augmented spaces, they can be solely virtual spaces in a metaverse, and so on, and they can be populated by bots. We had a indigenous knowledge virtual world a few years ago developed for Parramatta, how the Parramatta campus was before the arrival of the first fleet, and what kind of I mean, basically for students to explore the environment and to interact with indigenous people in that environment. And the last one, I said that there will be three ones. The third one is the evolving curriculum. So actually, by all those analyses that are in the personalized learning or in any of the learnings, and looking at what's happening outside in the world, in the industry, in the development of society, and etc., that AI can assist really on the directions of evolving of curriculum for a specific university, looking at the positioning of that university in those disciplines. Okay, I'm a little bit late. Apology for that, Juliet.
No problem. That was fascinating. So I love the idea of the personalized curriculum, and particularly thinking about those career aspirations and having a program like that. I remember I sat at an event a little while ago that looked at like they think that the future of education might be kind of like Netflix, where you chop and change. But I'll just quickly summarize, and we'll go back to having the conversation at the end. Immersive learning. I saw on the weekend my niece went into a hologram room, and she was learning about the sea life and whatnot with it kind of surrounding her and myself. Some amazing and some really terrifying as well. But I love the example of also being able to capture that Indigenous knowledge. So looking back, and then also thinking about, I know Ghana talks a lot about digital twins, so looking forward and using kind of physical environments now and replicating them in a digital world. And then the evolving curriculum. So for us, it might be, how do we build in the kind of rural aspect that's really important, or the point of differentiation. So fantastic. Thank you for that. And we will come back for questions from the audience. I can see that there's one or two there already, but let's pass it to Mike. Mike, would you like to now speak about the future of emerging technology and assessment, but also the student experience in general?
Sure. Thank you very much, Juliet. And thank you everyone for coming to join us today at this seminar. So Simeon talked about the different new aspects of the curriculums going to have to change because of generative AI. And I'd like to just draw your mind back just 2 days to a couple of news articles that came out exploring how these new technologies are actually being used by students. And what we've seen is in Australia, several Sydney universities surveyed and said hundreds of students using ChatGPT to cheat on their assignments. And what does that tell us? Well, that tells us that, first of all, students are very keen to adapt to new technology to enhance their learning experiences. Secondly, it tells us if universities are still saying that this is cheating, the universities are well behind the curve of what the students are already thinking. Now, these articles that I've been reading talk about how the universities use some detection software, and any academics who've joined us today and many professional staff will probably be aware of Turnitin and understand that Turnitin has existed for a long time, and there's quite a lot of trust in this software in terms of when it comes to identifying plagiarism as such. Now, Turnitin recently, fairly recently after ChatGPT was released, they had an AI text detection tool which they released as part of their software package for free for the moment. And then they said, okay, everybody, here you go. This is now active on your Turnitin accounts. You can now tell whether or not students are cheating using AI. But there's a bit of a problem with AI text detection as a general technology. And that's AI text detectors exist, but they don't work. Now, a big caveat to that. Sometimes AI text detectors, as part of an overall package to identify lapses in academic integrity, can work, but this assumes generally that students are idiots and that they do not know how to use any of the software. So when we say they don't work, we say they don't work accurately, reliably, or really when faced with any methods that students might use to try and hide where this text really came from. It assumes that students are taking the raw output from ChatGPT and just putting that into their essay and saying, there's my entire essay. But most students don't use it that way. Studies that I've explored looked at several different pieces of software. We saw that with specifically Turnitin AI Detect only was 50% accurate across both Bard, Claude, and GPT-4 generated content. So that was when there was no manipulation of the content, just the raw content. It was only 50% accurate across our range of samples. And when we started to do some other testing, we saw this accuracy levels drop even further when we start to use smaller samples. So things that you might expect to see for responses to online assessments, where we say students interact with each other on a forum. And we saw that there was actually only 39.5% accuracy for this unmanipulated content. And when the text was manipulated in some way, this ended up dropping all the way down to only 22%. So this tells us that there are some major concerns about trying to say to students, we are going to do what we've done forever, in that we're going to do the same assignments that we've been setting students for years and years, and you're the ones who have to adapt by not using these technologies. Because if you use these new technologies, we're going to stop you, or we're going to find you. And the research is showing that this is just really not the case. So if that's not the case, what's the future of the student experience when it comes to the use of AI tools? Well, I think these really need to be integrated more closely into the curriculum and more closely into assessment strategies themselves. Now, something that I've been doing some work on with several authors is what we call the AI assessment scale. Now, if you can't detect text that's been created by AI tools, what we've got to then be able to do is we've got to be able to say, look, this is how we want you to use this technology in an appropriate and in an ethical way. And this is the method that we've come up with to explore this. So this is a 5-level approach, a scalar-based approach to saying to students, look, in this assignment, in this case, this is how I expect you to use these AI tools. Starting at the level where a lot of universities are thinking at now is no AI. And some of you may think, oh, well, that's okay. I can just say to students, no AI at all, and that's fine. But unless this is in an invigilated condition, maybe it's a live presentation, a live demonstration, an invigilated exam, this level is not really suitable for anything where we send students away to do something. So this is only really suitable for assessed, invigilated, or in-person assessments. The next level is when we go on to, okay, you can use AI to present some ideas or to get some ideas or to help with structuring your work, but you can't use the existing content. Now, we might use this in cases where we're trying to assess directly students' use of language. So in English language teaching, this would be one use case for it. But again, elsewhere, how are we going to tell from other students who we expect to have a certain level of proficiency of English? We're not really going to be able to tell that with any degree of certainty. So for us at BUV, the minimum level that we actually set students the way we set assessments at is this AI assisted editing. So we say, do you know what we're looking for is your ideas. So as long as you use your ideas, we don't mind if you use your ideas expressed in a different way to help you get those points across. And that's at the level 3, where we say, okay, you go and you submit your assessed work, and that can be including AI generated tools and include that content. But what it can't do is just not be your ideas at all. So we ask students to produce their own work as an appendix. Again, this is the very minimum level. But what we're really pushing students towards is actually more of a complete integration of AI into assessments. And for me, that's where I really think that we need to be pushing for the future of education in AI, the student experience being a deeper integration of these technologies into both their learning experience and their assessments, by saying, hey, here's these tools, use these tools how you like, and we trust that you're going to use these in an appropriate way. Now, it's hard for universities to do, it's hard for individual faculty members to do, it's often hard for some students to do. But I really think that this is the only way that we're going to start to get ahead of this idea that students use these technologies to cheat, because cheating is what we say it is. And thanks, I'll stop that there.
Thank you for that. That was super interesting. So, kind of revolutionizing our approach to assessment. So I really like, first of all, your question at the end, well, it wasn't a question, it was a statement, but how do we even define cheating? And even technology can't detect cheating in some ways, or use of AI tools. And thinking about sometimes that raw output, but also the assessment scale. Like, I think about the no AI piece is probably how, when I went to university, we used to go into the exam hall, and it used to all be kind of completely an exam hall, and then you had to be careful that people weren't looking over each other's backs and things like that, as opposed to now most of our assessments are online, and so we have to adapt the curriculum. And most people I know have used ChatGPT or some level of AI because it is useful. So how do we then embed this? And it just makes us, we have to stop and think about it, and we have to then lean into the technology. So look, let me ask you a few questions then. And I think one of the ones that came to mind, I was going to ask you one that was just like, do you think we should accept technology in some ways? But I think we've come to both saying yes, and it is, there are uses there in some ways. There are obviously risks, but uses. So I think there's a really interesting piece here around inclusion. So when I was thinking about this AI assessment tool, one of the things, I guess, I know, Mike, that you had to consider was also level of sometimes privilege or children's socioeconomic background. And so could you give it a kind of an example there of what we need to consider with technology, but moving forward around that piece?
Sure. Thanks, Julia. Yeah, I think that the digital divide is a really critical element that we've got to consider when we're using new technologies, especially at this sort of tipping point, this inflection point when we're moving over towards more technology being integrated. A lot of, positive spin on AI says AI is going to be this great leveler, and it allows students with non-native speakers of English to express their ideas in a clearer way, and that's certainly possible. However, if universities don't accept that these technologies can really be used in an assessment situation, what you end up with is students who don't have access to the latest and greatest LLMs and the foundation models like GPT-4, Claude 3, Gemini Advanced, and maybe using free and open source versions, which are potentially more detectable than other software tools. So you then get a set of students all using AI tools, but only the ones who are disadvantaged and can't afford to pay $20 a month to buy the more advanced tools are actually the ones getting caught, whereas everybody else gets off scot-free. I think that's probably one of the biggest problems there that we've got to try and adapt to.
Yeah, thank you. And Simeon, can I ask you then about inclusivity from a staff perspective and detection as well?
Oh yeah, that's first of all, I want to add to what Mark said to
Yeah,
add
please.
just the Australian framework for generative artificial intelligence in schools. That was accepted. That was basically published by the Department of Education at the end of January. Has fairness as one of the principles, and the importance of what Juliet you're saying about the accessibility and inclusivity at all level, including actually as a cultural and intellectual sort of property and cultural and intellectual perspective. So now from staff perspective, I would say that there was immediate, what I have observed, there was immediate shift in changing assessment scenarios and learning scenarios, so that actually they make an attempt to benefit from what is offered by these models. So these models can offer a larger variety of options of, let's say, of opinions. For example, if there is an exploration of opinions of an idea, they can speculate from different perspectives. And that may develop the big issue that is in discussion now, the ability for critical thinking. Again, I'm an optimist. I'm a little bit biased. I'm an optimist. And because of that, I look at the way that this critical thinking can be developed and facilitated by AI. But there is a big community there with the valid arguments that may lead to the opposite effect. I mean, the use of if the AI technologies are used inappropriately, but we don't know exactly yet what inappropriately means.
Yeah. So embedding
And I will leave you on that point a little bit as a discussion to see what actually is appropriate and what is inappropriate
yes.
use.
Well, I was also thinking about staff perspectives around even the use of or detecting AI. So we were sharing stories about how there were some staff that had detected students who had used AI on their assessments and therefore were counted as an academic misconduct. But then the students had fortunately, so maybe this is something too that we need to tell the students to take notes and to capture their work, had fortunately had detailed notes or journal entries about kind of what they had been doing across the board to refute back. But I guess there's that piece as well of where staff are, we know that we're all biased, so staff are susceptible as well to being biased about what they're looking at, but being biased about people potentially. So you want to share sort of more there?
Yeah, no. Look, I mean, that came, yes, that came from a real case. But that now what you mentioned reminded me my very, very early days back at the University of Sydney when we in the Faculty of Architecture in the courses on design computing. One of the subjects involved developing a reflective journal in order to capture the emergence of the design ideas and the sort of the evolution of the design ideas through what students were doing, so that then they can reflect on that. So it turned out that in this case, when staff members they use proper sort of tools without knowing that, I mean, knowing to a certain extent that probably that there is a certain uncertainty in the statements made by these tools on whether text has been generated by AI or not, or what percentage has been generated. And Mark actually covered those aspects very nicely. But nevertheless, there are such tools, and in some subjects, especially in subjects related to writing essays.
Yes.
These things are used, and the fact that the students kept sort of a diary of the development of their assignments and of their studies, actually, of the full studies, saved their honor, I would say. I mean, this is with a bit of a grain of salt, but yeah, they those ones proved that the assignments were developed by the students. there was no discussion on that scale that Mark showed, whether that's on with the assistance of AI or without the assistance of AI. That didn't matter. It was just a sort of a binary decision with or without,
Yes.
whether there was a misconduct or whether there wasn't a misconduct. So in some
Well-
sense, that gives an idea for a pedagogy that
Yes.
can require the use of journals, for example, for some reason.
So that's interesting. So I like that, because we're saying, if it's like, just like, if students have different access to technology, that can disadvantage them. And then on the other end, we have staff who may rely on the technology to detect misconduct, but then they themselves are not, like, the technology is not necessarily always accurate, but then also staff cannot be accurate. So then it can fall back on students as well to maintain that, or we have to adapt our assessment scale, which is the piece here that Mike, I think, is incredible from kind of what you've been doing as well, is how do we build this in some ways. But what we were then talking about too, so is how do we think the curriculum will change? So there is a question in the chat box around how can we use generative AI to teach critical thinking. But let's start with thinking about that. I want to think about, like, how do we think education, sorry, not curriculum, but how do we think education and teaching around the curriculum will change? Mike, maybe I'll throw it to you to start, and then we'll go.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So in answer to the question, how can you use Gen AI to teach critical thinking? Well, one option is you start to integrate this into assessments and in the classroom, and you open this opportunity up to students. You say that this isn't cheating. You can use it, and what we want you to do is to be critical about the output of these tools.
Yes.
A lot of students are faced with what's called the illusion of finality when they use something like ChatGPT. They put in a prompt, they say, answer this essay question for me, and then what comes out, they say, wow, I couldn't possibly ever do this myself. This is it. This is the answer. Because it looks so nice and neat and tidy. But we recognize that when we're drafting pieces of work, draft doesn't just appear in your bullet points or notes. It can appear like a fully written manuscript, and that's still a draft that can actually then be adjusted. So by asking students to say, well, what is missing in the AI text, or what are the potential biases in there? And there's several different ways which we can explore this using both the text generation tools and also things like the image generation tools, asking students to create images and then saying, well, what does this say about how these models were trained when you ask for a family setting, and what does it give as a family setting? So there's a few different ways of being critical about that. And that is a growing body of AI research at the moment, saying we need to be careful to not just be, AI is great, let's use it for everything.
And what about, like, the fact that it's not fully reflective of an original idea?
Yeah, there's people who are now suggesting that we're getting to that point where some of the AI tools, especially Claude 3 and the Opus model, there's more ghosts in the machine. So Ethan Mollick did a recent post about this. When you start chatting to it, you can start to think that actually there are these original ideas, but we have to remember this is just the size of the model growing and growing and growing to encompass more of a body of human knowledge. So what is original thinking? Is any thought actually original anyway? If we say something, are we saying that, are we just parrots to what we've heard and read? Are we actually thinking ourselves anyway? So, a lot more ideas around that area as well.
I often think about this. When I first used ChatGPT, I was like, see, humans are so much the same than we are similar. The fact that, like, this is what I would write, so the original idea thing is, I find, really interesting. Actually, Simeon, if we can go to the next question. So this is around, is it good to see the work that shows a spectrum for potential adoption of AI in education, right? So from, maybe this actually might go, so from no AI to full AI, what is the panel's view on the effect of dependence over reliance on generative AI technologies on students' critical thinking or creativity? That's interesting. So are we then going to go to over-relying on technology?
No, that's actually an excellent question, I would say, really, and in-depth question. I would just finished before what Mark was saying. I sort of tried to type and replied there about the critical thinking, that in addition there is a specific there are specific strategies for retraining a model and using it in a specific subject, and then developing the skills of prompt engineering. It's labeled as prompt engineering, but basically the strategy of how to interact. Basically, there is a learning from the human side of how to interact with the model in order to sort of hopefully develop critical thinking. Well, I mean, there is a danger of in the complete reliance on AI, but I don't think that we will get to that stage, in my opinion. Currently, at least, the strategy is to keep the human finger on the things, and the selection and the decision making where it matters to be done by the humans. So in this case, in terms of the pedagogies, in terms of the content, in terms of what to be learned and how to be learned. But in terms of the analysis of the behavior from interaction with the technology or technology platforms, well, that can be taken completely by AI. There is no sort of that's my view, because there are techniques in data science that actually guarantee even causality in terms of learning process.
Yeah. Well, it is interesting too, because I know that there are schools teaching coding as a language model. I'm sorry, no, coding as a language almost. So what they're trying to do now is bring students through the process where they have like a next level of language, for lack of a better term right now. And so I think what you're saying is really interesting, because in previous discussions we've had, you've also talked about with thinking about the critical thinking, you don't need to always use AI and technology. And I think that's also reflected, Mike, in what you were saying around sometimes you can have no AI and maybe you need to go into a classroom for that versus more. But also the critical thinking piece, Simeon, that I was thinking that you were talking about a few weeks ago was also around understanding the models and making sure you understand the models.
Well, that was a good prompt engineering from you to me. But yes, that's on the behalf of us, first of all, on the behalf of educators, to ensure that we educate students in a way that they get a basic understanding of the models that are behind. They don't need to become computer scientists, but they have a basic understanding of the principles. I would say the principles of the probabilistic nature, of the plausibility, for instance, and the plausibility of the conclusions or of the responses that these models provide. So that is already a critical assessment of what is coming out of them. But this is also, in my opinion, an extremely important skill. So computational thinking and now AI understanding should be, in my view, should be included across the curriculum. Yes. Across the whole curriculum, not the computing curriculum STEM, but across the whole curriculum.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so I'm just conscious of time. So if I could just ask you one last really quick question each, and in just a few words, if you had a magic wand for the universities, in order to sort of advise them on how to approach the assessment and university experience, what would that be? Or are there any lasting comments that you would like to add? So, Mike, if we go with you first, and then Simeon again, this is the location on my screen.
Sure, thanks, Julia. Yeah, a magic wand is always going to be difficult, because what we've seen is that universities take a long time to adapt to new technologies. And it's only now that we're starting to see universities saying, oh, maybe we need to do something about this. And we're now talking 18 months after this really came about. So for me, a magic wand would be being able to push things more quickly through university panels senates to adapt for new policies for these new technologies. Having people recognize that these technologies need to be embedded into curriculum and into assessment as well.
Yeah, so like an innovation almost.
Well, more, I mean, the innovations exist, and people go, "Oh, yeah, that sounds really interesting." I'm sure there's some people who have been like, "Oh, yeah, that AI assessment scale sounds great, but it's never going to, get through all the different committees." Being able to push things through more quickly, I think, is probably going to be the magic one that I would hope we could bring in and say, "Look, we need to adapt to these new technologies more quickly, so we're going to just go, poof, there's the systems in place."
Great, thank you for that. Okay, and Simeon?
Yeah, Juliet, you wanted one thing. I would say have a university-wide discussion list on these aspects and technologies. Not just in a separate division, but university-wide. I'm part, for example, of a couple of universities such lists. One is Socrates GPT in one of the universities. But what comes there is exactly that wisdom that emerges through the interaction and learning about different tools, different applications, and what has been achieved. So, for instance, one of the lists just sent a message about one new system, which is quite nice, mizou.com, where you can organize very quickly brief educational course, and they showed the language a language course, which is amazing to me. Yeah. So this information fusing quickly through the university will create that culture and fabric, and partially will help with then further education of the students.
Yeah, fantastic, and I think that's great, right? And both answers are similar but different in terms of how do we, in order to push things through quicker, we probably need to have that university-wide discussion in order and commitment to then moving forward at pace, because technology is moving at a much faster pace than what universities are, if not much faster pace in some way. Okay, look, I want to thank you for your time. I think this has been incredible to think about how the curriculum may change, how the assessment may change as well, and what universities need to do to shift the dial and make sure that they're at the forefront of technology. I love the discussion about, we want to rely on it, but not over-rely as well. And so, look, I would love to thank you both for your time. It was really valuable. We are now going to move into an immersive digital experience where there may be more questions that come up. And so I am going to pass the conversation over to our incredible communications manager at the AI and Cyber Futures Institute, Matt Hoff. He will lead us now on a journey through the metaverse.
Thanks, Juliet. And everybody should be able to see on the screen now, I'm sharing a Metaverse world that we have for Charles Sturt University. In a short time, I will share a link with everybody, and you'll each get the opportunity to come in and use and walk around and experience the Metaverse world. But I did want to just give some, I guess, basic instructions and the likes in the first instance, just to try and make it as easy and positive experience for everybody as we can. When you come into the Metaverse world, it will give you a prompt to add your name and then enter the world, and you will appear within the space. And in the first instance, you will look like a robot. So it will essentially just be a bot-like character that will be standing in this world. To do directions, you simply use your directional keys. So forwards or upwards on your directional key makes you go forwards, and down makes you go backwards. Your two side keys make you turn around, so you can spin one way or the other. Within this world, we have a couple of key areas. So in front of me now, you should be able to see the amphitheatre, which is behind a large Charles Sturt sign. This is where you will start your Metaverse experience. And in that space, there is a video from our Executive Director, Professor Garnet Pogrebner, around the use of technology within the classroom. So in the first instance, I would love you to get comfortable to watch that video. And then following watching that video, start to explore by moving around using your avatar. To move around, as I mentioned, use your keys. We have over here a survey room. I would love you to actually go in and interact with the surveys. Simply, if you walk into the room, you will see these white dots. By clicking on the white dots, it gives you the question to be able to answer. Another feature as well is just the zoom. So the zoom is controlled by the scroll on your mouse, or if you have a touchpad, the scroll on your touchpad. By zooming in, you come right into the back of the avatar. Zooming out, you can see more essentially. So in some instances, you might actually find if you're zoomed out and you come into a world like such, you can kind of see like the wall gets in the road. By zooming in, you'll then remove that risk. By zooming out, again, you won't be able to see yourself. So that's just a sort of a tip for if you can't see where you're going as such. So what I'll do now is I will each give you the link. The link will be coming up into the chat area. And if everybody can start to move over to this metaverse world, that would be fantastic.
Welcome to the future of education, where the lines between the physical and the digital worlds blur, creating unparalleled learning experiences. My name is Gana Pogrebna, I'm a director of AI in Cyber Futures Institute, and today we will look at some of the most exciting technologies that help us revolutionize classrooms. At the age of AI, lecturers no longer lead human teams, they lead human-machine teams. So machines are in every classroom at the moment. We have tools like ChatGPT, Bing, Microsoft Copilot, DALL-E, and others helping us and sometimes hurting us in the classroom. So it is very important to incorporate tasks that would allow us to use GPT-type products or generative AI products in learning experiences. Students will use those technologies anyway, and banning them simply will not get us anywhere. So it is very important to have assignments that would incorporate bits and pieces of different technologies, like, for example, Microsoft Copilot, that allows us not only to ask questions to the technology, but also gain valuable references that would teach students how to incorporate reference work and do literature reviews. Another type of technologies that we currently have in classrooms is coding aids. It's very difficult to learn coding. We've all been there, or some of us have been there. And when we try to teach students about machine learning models or convolutional neural networks, it's incredibly difficult to explain how they work, how they learn. Now we have tools like Teachable Machines from Google, where you can have immersive experience with machine learning models without the necessity of coding. So you can have coding experience without actually coding. Isn't that great? Flashcards. I personally love flashcards. Flashcards help us remember things, learn things, and revise. And now we have tools like Quizlet that allow us to quickly generate online flashcards that are very interactive and are helping many students learn materials seamlessly. Tools that help us read PDFs. Well, very often we have to read very lengthy PDFs and extract information. Tools like ChatPDF, and there are many GPTs at the moment that allow us to read PDFs and extract information. Those tools are very useful in classroom. Learning tools like Socratic, where you can devise your own quizzes, you can ask academic questions, you can find relevant YouTube videos to explain a particular concept, are very useful as well. We can learn foreign languages with online technology and digital technology. For example, apps like Duolingo allow you to learn various languages in a matter of several lessons. Isn't that fantastic? Gamification is a big part of every lecturer's job. I personally use Kahoot that allows me to create interactive quizzes, and I always like to have these quizzes both at the beginning and at the end of the class to check what my students knew at the beginning of the class and what they actually learned at the end of it. Robotics tools. Well, robotics tools are extremely powerful. From good old programmable Lego solutions to B-bots, to Ozobots, to robotic dogs that we use in the Institute, all these tools are incredibly interactive and allow your students to quickly see what they can do with physical world, not only with the digital world. Dot and Dash robots allow us to have very interactive experiences and learn seamlessly both programming tools and understand the blur between the physical and digital environments inside and outside the lab. Augmented reality tools, virtual reality tools, and the Metaverse are really powerful in the classroom. Everyone can design beautiful avatars and have really interactive experiences in interactive and digital classrooms. This is a really fantastic experience for any student. For example, in tools like Engage and Mozilla Hubs, we can recreate classroom digitally, and each student can have very personalized experience that they really want to have. We also can design digital labs, immersive labs that have seamless experience with science. For example, the tools like Labstar allow us to completely recreate a science lab and have science lessons in there in complex scientific environments, explaining very complicated scientific concepts without actually being in a physical lab. At universities, we're currently educating people who will be retiring in 50 years' time. And we have all these fantastic tools that could help us. But new technology in the classroom can be both friend or foe. And it's very important to talk to your students about the potential dangers of technology, to talk about the environmental impact that it could have. The fusion of AI, robotics, and Metaverse in education is not just about adopting new tools, it's about reimagining learning journey, making it more inclusive, interactive, and impactful for everyone. If you want to learn about new technologies that I talked about in this video, and possibly more, check out our media blog at AI and Cyber Futures Institute.